Did you know that Americans over 60 lose more than $28 billion a year to financial scams? 28 billion. That's a staggering number. It's not just a statistic, it's a collection of stories. Stories of trust broken, savings decimated, and independence stolen. Most people think these victims are foolish or naive. They're not. They're targeted because they are decent, trusting people. The predators who go after them are masters of manipulation, experts at projecting an image of sincerity while their real intention is to bleed you dry. They've honed their craft. The question is, have you honed your defense? Most people focus on the wrong thing. They try to become human lie detectors, looking for that one single tell, the shifty eyes, the sweaty brow. That's amateur hour. That's what you see in the movies, and it'll get you robbed blind in the real world. The true skill, the one we relied on in countless interrogations, isn't about spotting a lie after it's been told. It's about reading intention before the person has a chance to act on it. It's about understanding the current before you get swept away by the river. The foundational principle, the absolute bedrock of this skill, is what we call the baseline method. Before you can spot what's abnormal, you must intimately understand what is normal. Every single person has a unique behavioral rhythm, a baseline. It's their default state of being. How they talk, how they sit, their cadence, their posture, the phrases they overuse, the way their eyes move when they're accessing memory, versus when they're just making casual conversation. Most people ignore this data. They see it, their subconscious logs it, but they don't consciously process it. That's a critical mistake. Let me tell you about a case, a woman named Margaret. She was a wealthy widow in her late 80s, sharp as a tack, but physically frail. She hired a new live-in caregiver, a charming young woman named Sarah, who came with glowing recommendations. For 6 months, everything was perfect. Sarah's baseline was calm, patient, and efficient. She had a little habit of humming softly when she was tidying up. She always made direct eye contact when speaking with Margaret. Her movements were fluid and relaxed. That was her normal. Then, Margaret's son called me. He just had a bad feeling. He couldn't explain it. So I advised him to just observe. Don't accuse, just watch. He started noticing tiny deviations. Sarah stopped humming. She started checking her phone constantly, shielding the screen. When she spoke to Margaret, her eye contact became too intense, almost forceful. Her movements grew jerky, a little too quick. These weren't lies. These were cracks in the baseline. Sarah was under immense financial pressure from a gambling debt, and she was planning to clean out Margaret's safe. The baseline shift was the early warning signal, the tremor before the earthquake. We intervened before she could act. This isn't just for high-stakes situations. Think about your daily life. Consider your spouse or a close friend. You know their baseline better than anyone. You know the specific tone of voice they use when they're genuinely excited versus when they're just being polite. You know how they hold their coffee cup when they're relaxed versus when they're stressed. A sudden change in that baseline, a text that's uncharacteristically blunt, a phone call that feels rushed is a piece of information. It doesn't automatically mean something sinister is afoot, but it is a signal to pay closer attention. Psychologically, our brains are wired for this. It's a survival mechanism called pattern recognition. Our ancestors survived by noticing the subtle change in the pattern of the rustling grass. That signaled a predator, not a gentle breeze. Your brain is a supercomputer constantly collecting data on patterns. The baseline method is simply the act of consciously accessing and interpreting that data, instead of letting it hum along as background noise. Have you ever gotten that strange, nagging feeling that something is off with someone you know well, but you couldn't articulate why? That was your subconscious mind alerting you to a baseline deviation. The first step to protecting yourself is learning to listen to that alarm. So you've learned to establish a baseline. You're paying attention to the normal rhythms of the people around you. That's the first gate. But the professionals, the ones who can read a room in seconds, they don't rely on a single tell. A single signal is just noise. An eye twitch could be a dry contact lens. Fidgeting could be too much caffeine. A single micro-expression of anger could be a fleeting reaction to a loud noise outside. Relying on one sign is like trying to diagnose a disease from a single cough. The real art, the next level of this science, is in identifying what we call microclusters. A cluster is a group of 2, 3, or more incongruous signals that happen simultaneously or in rapid succession. When you see a cluster, you're no longer looking at random noise. You're looking at a message, a powerful broadcast from the subconscious that is overriding the conscious performance. I remember a corporate fraud case involving a senior executive. Let's call him Mr. Jennings. He was accused of embezzling millions through shell companies. Sitting across from me in a boardroom, he was the picture of confidence. He leaned forward, maintained perfect, unwavering eye contact, and answered every question with a calm, steady voice. To the untrained observers in the room, the lawyers, the other board members, he looked like an innocent man, indignant at the accusation. But they were watching the show. I was watching the tells. I saw the cluster, while he was calmly saying, "I have always acted in this company's best interests." I saw three things happen at once. First, the corner of his lip pulled back in a barely perceptible sneer. That's the universal sign for contempt. Second, his left hand, which had been resting on the table, drifted up and momentarily covered his mouth as he spoke, a subconscious gesture to literally block the deceitful words from coming out. And third, under the table, his right foot was tapping a frantic, staccato rhythm against the floor. Individually, any of these could be dismissed. The sneer, maybe a stray thought. The hand gesture, perhaps an itch. The tapping foot, just nervous energy. But together, the cluster told the real story. The mouth said, "I am honest." The contempt micro-expression said, "I despise you for questioning me." The hand gesture said, "I wish I wasn't saying this." And the tapping foot screamed, "I need to get out of this room right now." That cluster was the confession, long before he ever signed a piece of paper. We focused our questioning on the specific accounts he managed during the period. His financials showed strain, and his composure shattered. You can see these clusters everywhere once you know what to look for. Think of a car salesman pushing a vehicle he knows has issues. He might have a big, friendly smile, the primary, conscious expression, but notice his body. Is he angling himself toward the exit? Are his arms crossed over his chest, creating a barrier? These are distancing behaviors. Listen to his language. Is he using a lot of qualifiers like "to be perfectly honest with you" or "frankly"? People who are being truly honest don't need to announce it. The smile says "trust me," but the body language cluster says "I'm defensive and want to escape." Psychologically, this is about cognitive dissonance. When a person is trying to project an idea or emotion that they don't genuinely feel, their brain is in conflict. The conscious mind works hard to manage the main channels, the face and the words. But the subconscious mind, which controls the vast majority of our nonverbal communication, leaks the truth through other channels. The feet, the hands, the fleeting expressions. When you see a cluster of contradictory signals, you are witnessing a battle between the conscious and the subconscious. And in my experience, the subconscious never lies. When was the last time you saw someone's words say yes while every other part of their body was screaming no? What signals gave it away? We've talked about reading the person, their baseline, and their signal clusters. But people don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in environments, and those environments talk too. This is a dimension most people completely overlook. They're so focused on the person in front of them that they fail to read the room they're in. This is a mistake. The way a person curates, maintains, or interacts with their environment is a powerful, often unfiltered, extension of their internal state. This is the domain of environmental psychology, and it's one of the most subtle yet revealing tools in the box. A person's space is a diary written in the language of objects, organization, and energy. I was once brought in on a particularly nasty burglary case where a family's home had been ransacked. The primary suspect was a disgruntled former employee, a handyman. He had a solid alibi and was cool as a cucumber during questioning at the station. He was a stonewall. We were getting nowhere. So I made a request. I wanted to interview him again, but this time at his own apartment, on his turf. The lead detective thought I was crazy, that it was giving up control. But I wasn't looking for control, I was looking for the truth. His apartment, on the surface, was unremarkable. It was tidy, almost obsessively so. Everything had its place. The books were arranged by color, the kitchen counters were sterile, the bed was made with military precision. This told me he was a person who craved order and control. But then I saw it. In the corner of his otherwise immaculate living room was a single armchair. And around that armchair was an island of pure chaos. Piles of unpaid bills, empty liquor bottles shoved under the cushion, an overflowing ashtray, and a tablet logged into online gambling sites. That corner was his behavioral residue. It was the physical manifestation of the part of his life that was spiraling out of control. The rest of the apartment was the mask he presented to the world, orderly, in control. That one chair was the truth of his desperation. He sat in that chair when he dropped the mask. I started the interview by asking him about the chair. Not about the burglary, not about the alibi. I just gestured to it and said, "That corner looks like it carries a lot of weight." He completely deflated. The mask crumbled. He confessed shortly after. We found the stolen items pawned to cover his gambling debts. The environment told us the story his words were trying to hide. This is an incredibly practical tool for your own life. When you're making a significant decision, like choosing a retirement community or a new doctor, don't just listen to the people. Read the place. In a care facility, look beyond the pristine lobby they show you on the tour. Are the residence doors decorated? Are people gathered in common areas, talking and laughing? Or are they sitting alone, staring at walls? Is the staff's body language open and engaged or tense and hurried? The environment will tell you if it's a place of community or a place of isolation. When you're hiring someone to work in your home, pay a visit to their office or workshop if you can. Is it organized and professional or chaotic and neglected? The state of their workspace often reflects the quality of their work. From a psychological standpoint, this is about how our internal state influences our external world. Our spaces become extensions of our minds. A mind filled with anxiety and disorganization often creates an external world that mirrors it. So, I ask you, take a look around your own home right now. What does your desk or your kitchen counter say about your current state of mind? It's not about judgment. It's about awareness. The story is always there, written on the walls. You just have to learn how to read it. All right, we've covered the deep dive techniques, baselining, cluster analysis, reading environments. These require observation over time. But what about those moments when you don't have time? The first meeting, the handshake with a stranger, the split second when you have to decide whether to trust, engage, or walk away. In this world, you often have to make rapid assessments to protect yourself. For these situations, I use a principle I call the 3-second rule. This isn't about making a definitive, final judgment of a person's character. It's about gathering a flash report, a gut-level snapshot that will guide your initial interaction and determine how much caution you need to apply. Your subconscious mind processes an incredible amount of information in the first few seconds of an encounter, and that initial hit is often the most honest data you'll get before social masks and calculated scripts take over. I'll give you a field example. I was working a case that required me to meet a new confidential informant in a noisy diner. These situations are always tense. You don't know if the person is reliable, wired, or setting you up. This informant, a man we'll call Mickey, shuffled in looking exactly the part, nervous, unshaven, wearing a frayed jacket. He was trying to project the image of a desperate man, someone who would do anything for a bit of cash. My analytical brain started cataloging these obvious signals. But in the first 3 seconds, as he approached the table, my gut sent up a different flag. It was his shoes. They were expensive, Italian leather, and though they were scuffed, I could see they were immaculately polished underneath the dust. It was a tiny detail, completely at odds with the rest of his down-on-his-luck persona. That was the 3-second read. The frayed jacket was a costume. The polished shoes were the truth. It told me he wasn't desperate, he was calculated. He was a performer. This tiny piece of data completely changed my approach. Instead of treating him like a scared amateur, I treated him like a professional negotiator. I was more guarded, more direct. It turned out he was trying to play both sides, selling information to us while still working for the people we were investigating. That initial 3-second impression, the dissonance between the costume and the shoes, saved the investigation from being compromised. This is something you can apply every single day. The next time a contractor comes to your door to give you an estimate, or you meet a new financial advisor, practice the 3-second rule. In that initial moment, before a single word about business is spoken, just observe. How do they carry themselves? Do they walk with confidence or hesitation? When they shake your hand, is the grip firm and dry, or is it a limp, sweaty mess? Do they meet your eye with warmth, or do their eyes dart around the room? Assessing your possessions? This isn't about being cynical, it's about collecting raw, unfiltered data. Your brain is brilliant at this. The scientific term for it is thin slicing. Studies have shown that people can make astonishingly accurate judgments about a person's personality, competence, and even trustworthiness from just a few seconds of observation. It's your ancient, hardwired survival system at work, assessing for potential threats or allies. The trick is to trust that initial data point. Don't let the person's subsequent smooth-talking sales pitch erase that first, honest impression. Think back to a time your gut feeling about someone you just met turned out to be spot on. What was it, in that first few seconds, that your intuition picked up on? Learn to honor that initial report. It's rarely wrong. We've explored how to read people in person face-to-face, where you can see the tells and feel the energy. But the world has changed. So much of our communication now happens through a screen. Texts, emails, social media posts. The predators and manipulators have adapted, and you must, too. They believe they can hide in the digital world, that the lack of physical presence makes them invisible. They're wrong. The principles of reading intention remain the same. You just have to learn to read a different kind of body language. This is what I call digital age profiling, and it's about finding the truth in the text. I consulted on a case involving a sophisticated inheritance scam targeting seniors. A woman received an email purportedly from a lawyer in Europe, claiming she was the sole heir to a distant relative's vast fortune. The emails were cleverly written, filled with emotional language words like tragic, destiny, and blessing designed to bypass logic and appeal directly to hope and grief. The writing style was frantic, with intentional grammatical errors and typos to make it seem like it was coming from a person who was overwhelmed and perhaps not a native English speaker. It was a carefully constructed digital persona, but the digital baseline was all wrong. The story screamed emotional chaos, but the digital cues screamed calculated business. Using basic forensic tools, we looked at the email metadata. The messages, filled with supposed late-night grief, were all sent between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Africa time. The IP address originated from a known hub for cybercrime syndicates. The digital body language was completely incongruous with the emotional story being sold. The timing and location were the digital equivalent of a man claiming to be heartbroken while tapping his foot and checking his watch. You can apply this same critical lens to your everyday digital interactions. It's a crucial modern survival skill. Let's say you get a frantic text message, supposedly from your grandchild, claiming they're in trouble and need you to wire money immediately. Before you panic, analyze their digital baseline. Read the message carefully. Are they using words or phrases they've never used before? Is the punctuation style different? Maybe they always use emojis, but this message has none. Or maybe they're using emojis you've never seen them use. These inconsistencies are red flags. It's the digital version of a baseline shift. It could be a sign that their phone has been hacked or cloned. Another powerful tell is pronoun usage. Psychologically, deceptive people often distance themselves from the lie. In their writing, they may avoid using first-person pronouns like I and me. Instead of I'm in trouble, a scammer might write, there's a bad situation here. It's a subtle way of creating psychological distance from the fabrication. Have you ever read an email from a coworker and just felt the passive aggression? Even though the words themselves were perfectly polite, that was you reading the digital tone. The choice of words, the sentence structure, the timing of the reply, it all paints a picture. So, here is the final, and most important, point. All these tools, baselining, cluster reading, environmental analysis, the 3-second rule, and digital profiling are not meant to turn you into a paranoid, cynical person who mistrusts everyone. That is a miserable way to live. The purpose of these skills is the exact opposite. It is to give you the confidence to trust your judgment. It is about replacing generalized, free-floating anxiety with focused, calm awareness. It's not about finding the lie in everyone, it's about recognizing the truth when you see it and More importantly, recognizing the dangerous inconsistencies in those few individuals who mean you harm. This is not about building walls. It is about building a gate and knowing, with quiet confidence, when to lock it. Use this knowledge not to shrink from the world, but to engage with it more safely and authentically than ever before.